You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome, Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero. We have a special guest on the line tonight. It's early August, gentlemen. Mike Clay of ESPN at Mike Clay NFL. Bob Harris, what is going on in New Mexico this evening?
It's very hectic. It's very hectic for all of us, as I know it is for Mike Clay. And I guess there was a little excitement. The first episode of Hard Knocks was kind of exciting, and we saw Corey Coleman. We saw all kinds of things that probably nobody wanted us to see, or maybe they did. But we saw Corey Coleman not trying very hard, and then before that, we already saw that he got traded to Buffalo. Mike Clay, did the worst receiving core of the NFL get any better with the addition of Corey Coleman?
Yeah, I think so. At least there's upside, right? I mean, Sometimes you look at certain units, even on the NFL side, right? Just analyzing teams, you look at them and you say, there's no help coming, right? It's not a good situation, and there's no young players that could potentially break out. At least now you have that with Buffalo, right? You have Kelvin Benjamin. We've seen it, flashes from him at times. Obviously, Corey Coleman's a first-round pick. There's pedigree there. We've seen flashes from him when he's been healthy, but he's barely been on the field, and he's had poor quarterback play so far. And then same thing with Zay Jones. At least you have some upside there. This is a second-round pick who had a season with well over 100 catches just 2 years ago. So at least there's pedigree there. At least there's upside. It makes you gives you a little hope, I suppose, as a Bills fan and maybe even as a person invested in these guys in Dynasty.
Hope as a Bills fan.
As we say, sometimes it can't hurt, and hope is cheap. I do like to indulge myself.
Yeah, Bills fans don't really like me too much, but I like this move. I'll give them credit. This was a nice move to bring in Corey Coleman at pretty much no cost.
To be fair, Mike, no fans like you. We all know that.
Yeah, I'm biased against all 32 teams. That's what I like to say.
Disgusted.
We're talking about the Bills, Mike. With all the scrutiny around LaShawn McCoy with this off-season nonsense, nothing. It's kind of quieted down. We've talked about this quite a bit. Where are you on with LaShawn McCoy, Mike?
Yeah, you know what? I've been getting him a little bit lately. Especially when I want to be a little bolder. So, for example, right now we're doing that Apex draft with some of the better minds in the sport, or in the game for sure. So, at the end of the third round, McCoy was still sitting there, and I decided to take a chance on him. I figure if he's on the field come week 1, he plays out the season. That's going to be a nice value. So, that's probably about the area I'd look at him. I have no problem just totally passing on him if you don't want to deal with that potential headache. I mean, and there's two real things to worry about. There's the off-field stuff, and obviously there's the on-field concerns about this Bills offense. But I do think, on-field, I will say this. You think a lot about the shaky O-line, an offense that may not score a ton of points. Those are red flags. But remember, they're probably going to throw him a ton of passes. He might push for a 20-some% target share. And that's going to raise his floor in fantasy. So I think he'll still come away as a running back 2 at worst.
I'm kind of with you. It's been, for a while, everyone dialed back when the news first came out of the home invasion. He's somewhat been implicated in. But since then, it has calmed down. And the price, it just gets to a point where, damn, it's the third, fourth round, end of the third, early fourth. I'm starting to buy in. We last talked to you a couple months ago. I'm just curious, in recent weeks, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen or you've made to your rankings that aren't due to injuries or suspensions or other issues like that? Just where are you making your major adjustments?
Wow, put me on the spot here, Bob.
I am.
None, Bob. They were perfect.
They were golden then. They're golden now. I knew that.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect from day one. I think a lot of this has happened due to news, but it's just things like Andrew Luck moving up a couple spots as we get more comfortable with his health. I'll say I feel better about Brandon Cooks. I didn't like his ADP early on, but signing that long-term extension, it made me rethink things a little bit. I think there will be more of a commitment to get him the football. You just don't trade a 1 and extend a guy for that long to play that Sammy Watkins role. I think he'll still be in that role, but I think they'll be a little bit more creative than they were with Watkins. So feel a little bit better about him. Otherwise it's just been, I suppose, injury related, right? Sony Michel down, Rex Burkhead and Jeremy Hill up. I'm a little more prone to take a shot on Jeremy Hill later in my draft. would not shock me at all if he played a significant role, at least early in the season, like Mike Gillislee did last year. So I'd say those are probably the most notables as of late.
We talk about Brandon Cooks, Mike. I mean, he's been healthy. He's a veteran. He's a young NFL veteran at this point, so he's got a lot of polish. He's had the luxury of playing with Drew Brees and Tom Brady, a little downgrade in Jared Goff. So Brandon Cooks, I think, is coming at somewhat of a fantasy discount. This is a kid that's going to catch 75 balls and go over 1,000 yards and have 7 touchdowns. I think we like that. Where do you have Brandon Cooks? He's one of these question marks in a crowded Rams offense. Do you think we can get a good value on Brandon Cooks at this point? And what range? I'm not looking at your rankings at the moment, but I often do.
Yeah, it's tough because you're also seeing Cooper Kupp hype, right, as well. I mean, one of these three has to lose. They're not going to have 3 top 25 receivers, so you got to pick the guy you don't like. And I'm not buying on Woods disappearing. You know, like Cooks is getting the hype, Kupp's getting the hype. Why would they go away from Woods, who was their best receiver last year? I mean, they're certainly their most targeted receiver, and he was very effective. Yes, he may miss more time with an injury. That's been an issue for him. And I know they use more three-wide sets than anyone in the NFL. They led the NFL in that category last year. They score plenty of points. They don't have a primary receiving tight end. You know, they're probably going to feature these 3 guys. But, again, it's still going to be very hard for all 3 guys to live up to their ADP. So, for me, I hedged on all of them a little bit. I have Cooks at 24th in my rankings. I have Woods at 26th. And I knocked Kupp down quite a bit to 43rd. I mean, that might be, you know, the report today
Mike.
the report today that, you know, they're about the chemistry with him and Goff makes me rethink it a little bit. But he was 25 last year, and if somebody has to lose, guys, who's it going to be? It has to be one of them.
You know, we talk about this pretty much every week about looking down the drinking straw, and we hear these spikes. And look, Jason LaCamfora, CBSSports.com, they're on the scene and watching the joint practice with the Ravens, and writing, you know, the words nearly unstoppable and associated with with Kupp. Well, that's one day. You know, you have to put it in context of the entire offseason and even in the entirety of this offense, basically going back to last year. And I think you're right. Robert Woods still a great value and something I think you wrote, you know, right after the trade. You know, this offense has relied more on the short and intermediate passes and some run after the catch. So I guess that's, you know, I'm not going to get too excited on a couple days news. I might need a little more evidence of this before I freak out. Another guy that's all of a sudden, you know, really drawing a lot of praise is Jordy Nelson. And conversely, Martavis Bryant catching a little shade from his offensive coordinator. Are we missing the boat, though, on like a Derek Carr?
I don't think so. You know, I was writing about this team today, and I think, you know, it's been there's kind of 2 sides to the coin, right? They've been kind of criticized and mocked the John Gruden offense here, or the John Gruden look Raiders, I suppose. But I like what they've done on the defensive side of the ball, actually, you know, like adding Tier Whitehead and Derek Johnson at linebacker, and they bring in Rashawn Melvin at corner, Maurice Hurst at defensive tackle. They've actually done a nice job shoring up that side. It's the offense that still bothers me. You know, the O-line's still pretty good, but what's going on with Donald Penn? We don't even know if he's going to be back with the way it sounds right now. Yeah, Amari Cooper, Jordy Nelson, Martavis Bryant are all coming off down seasons last year. Do we really expect all 3 to bounce back? I mean, is Ryan Switzer the answer in the slot? I'm just not sure I can really get too excited about this offense. It's going to go more on the run, again, go with a run-heavy scheme, which is just bizarre in this day and age in the NFL. They bring in Doug Martin, who was the worst running back in the NFL last season. Can Marshawn Lynch do it again at 32? Derek Carr has always been, you know, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say overrated, but he just hasn't lived up to expectations. So I'm certainly not on the Raiders offense. I think it's going to be low volume, run first, and I just have a lot of question marks about these guys, including Jordy Nelson, who is generating some hype. But again, the guy's splits between Aaron Rodgers and no Aaron Rodgers is massive. It's really concerning, and Devontae Adams performed last year with Brad Hundley. Why was Nelson a one-catch guy every week sort of performer? I just don't think Derek Carr is the answer to his prayers. I'm not going to get on that 33-year-old bandwagon.
You loved Marshawn Lynch a couple months ago.
I do like Lynch. He's the guy I would be willing to invest in the middle rounds. I will say this. There's the suggestion that they do like Martin, and he's going to have a chance to be at least force a timeshare here. I would still bet on Lynch being the better back and taking control of that job. But yeah, other than that, the passing game, it's something I'm going to avoid. I don't like Cooper. I don't like Nelson. I'm staying away from Bryant considering all the concerns with him. I don't know, maybe Jared Cook guys in a 2 tight end league and Lynch, that's about it.
Why don't you like Amari Cooper, Mike, if you don't mind me asking?
It feels like they're almost going to say, we don't care if he's as inefficient as Des Bryant last year. We're just throwing him the ball. He's just going to be he's the guy. And I don't know if he can do it. He really did not play well last season. He had that one big explosive game, but otherwise it was very disappointing. He only averaged a 19% target share. I don't know if he has it in him. And if he doesn't, you're paying third, fourth round ADP right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying up a lot for him at a deep position. You don't have to force that at that round. I'd rather go elsewhere. There's some high ceiling running backs there. There are other quality running back options. I'll go with Demaryius Thomas. He's been a top 16 fantasy receiver 6 years in a row. I'll gladly go that direction.
Right, the guy who's always rebounding from 1,000-yard season or something. Look, I always like to joke with you about your Twitter followers because they get rankled over things. I'm a big fan of yours, not because I like you. I do kind of like you a little bit, but I know your process, right? And that's what this is all about to me. And I know the effort and work that you put into this. It's detailed and complete. But just, what part of your projections do the readers tend to object to the most?
I'd say the most pushback is when it comes to high efficiency players, right? Like, why do you hate Alvin Kamara when I say he's going to regress to the mean? It's not an insult on talent, and it goes for touchdowns as well. And you've seen, Bob, I know you've seen this too. The players push back on that too. DeAndre Hopkins, I have him projected second in the NFL in touchdown catches, and that wasn't good enough. That was an insult to DeAndre Hopkins. So, these guys won. What the highest efficiency, the highest volume, everything, and if you don't deliver it, whether it's the fans or the players, apparently they're not too fond of it. But you have to understand that the numbers speak for themselves. I just had my touchdown regression to the mean articles come out over the last couple of days, and it adds up. I mean, look, the last 24 guys have projected to score fewer touchdowns over the past 2 years. All 24, Bob, have fallen off. It's a perfect 100% hit rate. It's not that those players are bad. It's a tough sport with a lot of good players and a high injury rate, variance, turnover. These guys just cannot sustain these crazy high or really these crazy low rates, and they seem to always come back to earth. So again, when I say Kamara's going to have a lower yards per carry and yards per reception and fewer touchdowns, doesn't mean he's going to play worse. It's just the nature of the game.
Mike, so Mark Ingram is going to be suspended, right? And I think a lot of people, when we talk about Alvin Kamara, you think that he's one of these gadget-type backs, but the reality is he's 215 pounds. That makes him just as heavy as Melvin Gordon. It makes him heavier than Kareem Hunt. It makes him lighter than Leonard Fournette and heavier than Devontae Freeman. These are guys that we've seen in the past get the football a ton. So you don't think that where Mark Ingram's going to be suspended, we know they drafted a running back. Alvin Kamara can handle the bulk for a few games anyways. I know he only had 120 rushing attempts last season. It was 81 receptions, but is he a 200 carry running back, Alvin Kamara?
200, yeah. I mean, he can get there. I have him a 186 this year, 74 catches, so I think he can get there. But once Ingram comes back, I mean, you have another terrific back. I mean, Ingram his production should not be or cannot be overstated. He's been, in terms of yards after contact, yards per carry, he's been one of the best in the NFL throughout his career. So they'd be silly not to involve him heavily, and he's kind of better in them early down situations where Kamara is the kind of guy you get the ball to in space. So
sure.
I think there's room for both of them to be productive in fantasy, but not to the extent of last year. I think Kamara will be a fringe top 5, top 6 guy by the end of the season. Ingram more of a running back too. It's just not sustainable to produce 2 RB1s. I mean, in the short term, when Ingram's out, can he be a guy that handles a larger workload? Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at week 1 projections, and he's right there with Bell and Johnson. They play Tampa Bay. They play the Bucs. I mean, good front 7 there, terrible secondary. He's going to be catching the football plenty, probably pushing for 20. I have him at 21 touches. Yeah, he's going to be an elite option that first month.
Yeah, when you said a few minutes ago that I was putting you on the spot, it makes me feel like I didn't do a very good job of it. So let me try again. Are there any?
Who's your top 5 fullbacks this year, Mike? Yeah, let's hear it.
that was it. No, I'm just really down on Kyle Juszczyk. I was very disappointed by last year, but I expect positive regression. Look, are there any players like that you feel like since you began the process, and I want to keep stressing, this is a process. This is not I like this guy today. This is a thing where you're looking through your numbers and you're looking at the developments. Is there anyone that's growing on you, or what player is growing on you the most in recent weeks?
Yeah, there's probably a few of those. I would say Corey Coleman to some extent. I've accepted, I suppose, that he's going to play a bigger role than maybe I thought. I'm still struggling to push him too high just because I know Darren Sproles is going to be mixed in. There's no way he's coming back to be just a returner and stand around and handle 3 to 5 touches a game. I don't buy that. And Jay Ajayi obviously is going to be busy as well. So I think Clement, by the way, Clement obviously has some serious handcuff appeal too, which makes me justify him in the later rounds a little bit more. I guess Rex Burkhead a little bit. I know my buddy Evan Silva likes him a lot. I'm having trouble pushing him too far because I already have him projected to double his previous career high in carries and also set a career high in receptions, and he's still coming up 35th in projections. So I'm having a hard time pushing him too far, considering he's 29 and hasn't done it in the league just yet. So I would say those guys. I mentioned Brandon Cooks earlier too. I think he's another one. And if I had to throw one more, I'd say maybe I moved up a few spots on Jimmy Graham. My concern with him was really just in PPR. Is he going to see enough targets? He's going to score touchdowns. He'll be busy near the goal line. But I was a little concerned about volume just because Aaron Rodgers' history is lots of touchdowns to tight ends, not a lot of targets to tight ends. And I didn't know where Graham would fall in that spectrum, especially since last year, yes, he was busy near the goal line, but most of his work was in the short range. So, again, the reports that they are trying to feature him as a target, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Some of these rookie running backs, Mike, I wanted to get your opinion while we have you on the line tonight. Who are you keen on outside of Saquon Barkley? Any appeal with Royce Freeman week 1, some Ronald Jones love? I know I'm a guy that's I'm going to hammer wide receivers. In fact, I have a football guys draft tonight. I'm probably going to draft 3 or 4 wide receivers right out of the gates. And then I find myself with the likes of a Royce Freeman or a Ronald Jones, even a Kerryon Johnson. I'm a little hesitant on Nick Chubb. Where are you in terms of rookie running backs at this point?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting strategy for sure, especially with everyone else hammering the running back position early. Come out hard at wide receiver and then come back and take maybe even 2 of these rookies. And see what happens. So, there's 4 guys I really like in a bunch after Barkley. Barkley I have at 5. And then from 18 to 21, I have the other 4 rookies together. I find them mostly interchangeable. You mentioned Freeman. He's the top of the board for me. In Denver, I think I'll blow Devontae Booker out of the water pretty quickly and be the guy. Darius Geis next. Again, you worry about his ceiling. Chris Thompson's good. He's not going anywhere, guys. He's going to play a big role in passing situations. So I have Geis next, even though he's gone about 2 rounds earlier in MFL 10. So he's probably not a guy I'm going to have much. And then Ronald Jones in Tampa Bay. Again, you took a guy in the second round. He's going to be your lead back most likely, barring disaster. And then Rashad Penny. I have him 4th just because I expect a slow start with Chris Carson being involved. You guys know I liked Carson a lot as a prospect last year, but I like Penny more as a prospect. And that's the way I look at it. I think Penny is going to be the next Kareem Hunt. He had the similarities are unbelievable, down to the fact that Hunt led the NFL in rushing last year, and Penny led the FBS in rushing last year. I mean, the size, the elusiveness, the tackle breaking, the post contact. I mean, these guys are crazy similar. And Penny, by the way, is a little faster too. His 40 was 0.2 faster. So I think he's going to be terrific, and it might take a month, but I think he's going to blow up this year.
We're going to be doing some bold predictions for the upcoming season. I'd like to get one for you. I'm asking this for a friend named Justin. How great will Patrick Mahomes be this year?
Well, you're asking Justin, you said?
No, I'm asking for a friend.
Listen, I'm an Eagles fan, as you guys know. I've always had a soft spot for the Chiefs as well. I have like a big Dallas Texans helmet sitting here next to me. I just like the history of the NFL and have always followed Hank Stram going back to the 50s and 60s. Always been into that.
Articulate that ball, Leonard.
Yeah. 65 toss power trap. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's my long way of saying that. I love that when Andy Reid left. It was bittersweet when they moved on from him because he went to the Chiefs, and I love the guy. I think he's brilliant. I'm fortunate of chatting with him the past couple of years about Mahomes this year at the Combine, and if he feels like he could trade Alex Smith after a career year and move on to Mahomes, I like to believe that he knows what he's doing. I'm sure he's sitting there and his mouth's watering to get Mahomes on the field. So I think there's a reason for a lot of excitement. But I will say this, I do share the concerns about the reports you've seen so far, and I've been talking about this for a long time. The guy's problem with interceptions, and that is going to be a big problem for the team in the win-loss column. Turnovers cannot be understated or overstated. They're extremely important. Turnover margin determines about half of the team's win total for a season, and teams like the Bills and the Chiefs, I think, are going to get an eye-opener in that department in 2018. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on, but I think the guy has a ton of skills, obviously.
Ooh. So in other words, there's going to be some bumps and bruises for Patrick Mahomes. And what do you think, Mike? So where do you have Mahomes ranked tonight? Top 15? I thought you had him at like 13.
Yeah, I have him at 12.
In the winter. 12.
Yeah,
all right. So he's a QB1 then tonight.
Yeah, I'm saying negative things, but I still have him at 12, right? There's still a lot of upside there. He could be one of the breakout players of the league. I mean, keep in mind, look what Deshaun Watson did last year, guys, and he had the highest off-target rate in the league. I mean, he was missing guys left and right, but he was also making big plays. I think that's something Mahomes brings to the table as well.
Right. There's a little bit of a difference between being high in fantasy, being high in NFL. He may take his lumps in the NFL, but other than the fact that we lose a chance at a score, fantasy owners aren't that excited about interceptions, right? I mean, it's not that big a deal. We're more worried about touchdowns. There's some upside. Any other things that might shock people? Any expectations? Anything you would consider a bold prediction for the season?
Man, bold prediction. How about the Browns we'll talk more about the Browns, right? The Browns will be a fantasy relevant offense this year. I think, Tyrod they played Pittsburgh week 1 at home. I mean, and Tyrod, especially in scoring where it's -2 for an interception, he might be in the QB1 discussion. I think he's a very underrated player. He's a lot of weapons. We talked about Landry, Landry, Josh Gordon there. They have David Njoku in his second season. They have a trio of running backs. The offensive line's pretty good. I mean, man, if they can move Bitonio out to left tackle and Corbett works out at left guard, I mean, that's just another step up for that offensive line. They just have the pieces in place to be an above average offense. So, yeah, watch out for the Browns offense. I'll go with that, I guess.
That is bold. And think Tyrod Taylor playing with a healthy Sammy Watkins for a nice stretch in 2015. It worked out pretty well for fantasy owners.
Oh, yeah, that was great. That's one of the better connections for a part of a season we've seen in the past decade, and you don't hear much about it.
Yep.
You talk about that often, Bob, and it's true. It was nice to see the Clemson version of Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, but low ADOT guy in Tyrod Taylor. So I think and we've talked about this
more
too.
about the talent around him, though, more than him.
Yeah, we had Hermsmeyer on, and he was talking about how showing that receivers are the ones who are mostly responsible for their ADOT. So I think what we see with Tyrod is that it's who's around.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's possible. I do think to some extent I disagree with that. I chatted with Josh about that a lot. I really respect his work. He does a great job, but I think he's mostly right. But I think it's more like maybe 80 to 90%.
Yes.
I do think the quarterback does affect that a bit, and Alex Smith being a good example of that. I saw that firsthand when I was projecting guys during the Alex Smith era, and Sam Bradford at times affected that. Certainly Tyrod at times. Although Tyrod's came down last year. Before that, it was above average the previous 2 years. Yep. So that could have been a product of that new offense. Remember, they made the coaching change last year, and not to mention that their weapons were pretty bad. They were throwing to LaShawn McCoy and Charles Clay a lot. So I wouldn't put a ton of stock in that. I think
my point exactly.
Yeah, you got it.
We'll put Jared Goff right in that. I think Jared Goff's going to have some fantasy relevance. He's a guy with 30 touchdowns.
This is the Bold Take Show. I'm glad you showed up, Justin.
I appreciate it. So, Mike, before we let you go, throw us a couple sleepers for 2018.
Sleepers, man, we could talk about sleepers all day, I think, here. I just mentioned Tyrod. I'll keep him as my quarterback. You guys know I like Jordan Wilkins a lot, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's still a late-round flyer to jump all over. In fact, I'd have no issue with taking Mack and Wilkins in the late rounds. I think Hines is going a little too early. And, maybe it's to Tariq Cohen. But, if you're looking for the lead back in that offense, it's going to be Mack or Wilkins, I think. Isaiah Crowell, I like a lot. His ADP is rising a little bit, but I've loved him all offseason in the 8th round. That's just stealing a guy who should be a 15-plus touch guy. And it was averaging guys about 4.5 yards per carry the past 2 seasons. No one talks about that. He's been effective, had a career year in the yak department last year as well. I don't think I'll shock you too much at receiver. I guess John Ross is a guy that I've been loving this offseason. His stock is on the rise for sure, with the Brandon LaFell release. So that's just a no-brainer. Top 10 receiver late. I'll take him. Cam Meredith's another one in New Orleans. Man, if that connection between he and Breeze takes off, he may be a top 20 receiver this year. So love that a lot. And Jordan Reed. I'll throw Jordan Reed out there. I like taking him in the 8th round. I don't care if I already have Gronk. I don't care if I have Delaney Walker, who's my favorite target at tight end this year, in the 7th. I'll still take Reed in the 8th or 9th round. I mean, the guy has elite upside. That's a potentially league-winning move. Even go Reed 9, Andrew Luck in the 10th, and you could win your league just on that move alone.
We share a lot of the same sentiments, Mike. All of us do. We're an interesting part of the offseason where these names are getting beaten to death. But I agree with Jordan Reed. His upside, he has Rob Gronkowski upside. And as far as I'm concerned, it's obviously the health with Jordan Reed. He's going to have to develop a new rapport with Alex Smith. But, Alex Smith, like Travis Kelce, and if Jordan Reed stays healthy. And, it's similar like Cousins with Kyle Rudolph. I'm keen on Kyle Rudolph. A lot of hype on Diggs and Adam Thielen, but I think Kyle Rudolph falls in that Delaney Walker range. And I will take Kyle Rudolph all day long with Delaney Walker. Mike, look, you've been cynical. You mentioned Marlon Mack. You have not come off as the biggest advocate of Marlon Mack. I mean, you've mentioned Naheem Hines. Now it's Wilkins. Are you, and usually, and what's scary is, like when we've seen it with you before, when you don't like a running back, and I feel like Mack is kind of on the fringe there, you're usually right. I do not like Marlon Mack. We know he's going to get the first crack.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't like Mack. I mean, coming into the league last year, I wasn't a big fan of him as a prospect, and I think he'll probably settle in as a committee back. That said, you mentioned hitting on running backs in recent years. I've had success with guys being, some hitting on guys I liked and the opposite of that. And that's, again, that's not my way of patting myself on the back. I'm just saying it's yards after contact. That's what I look at from a rookie season, especially. And guys that are very good in that category or very bad tend to go that direction throughout their career, even if it's 100 carries. It's unbelievable that how successful that is if you're looking at guys on the polar ends. And with Mack, he is one of the top 12 YACs as a rookie since 2009. And again, the list of guys on that list is pretty successful. So that's why I feel a little bit better about him. That said, when I've been talking up Wilkins, it wasn't really a shot at Mack throughout the offseason. I just like Wilkins as this year's Chris Carson potentially. And he fell to the Colts in the 5th round. They obviously could have a much better offense this year if Andrew Luck plays, and he is 3-down upside. So again, just take shots at players in good offenses. You have a couple options here for the Colts, and maybe one of them ends up the lead back, and you have yourself a stud.
I always agree with him. It's crazy.
We just listen. We just like to listen to you, Mike. You're a friend of the podcast. We appreciate you coming on tonight. Real quick before I let you go, you're high on Chris Carson. Bob's jaw dropped at the NFL draft. I think a lot of people did when they saw Penny get drafted as high as they did. Is there going to be a successful running back for the Seattle Seahawks? I feel like they have not got it right since Marshawn Lynch has departed. Alex Collins.
I talked about this for like 5 minutes, 20 minutes ago.
No, I know, I understand that, but talk about like the offensive line woes. I mean, they're almost like snake bitten at the position. CJ Prosise. I mean, is there going to be a viable? Rashad Penny's going to get the football 300 times, as far as I'm concerned. We hope, but if the offensive line stinks, it's not room for it to get much worse. Is he going to be an RB1? I mean, what type of share do you see in Seattle?
That would be a good reason to have a guy who's good after contact and elusive, right? Because the O-line's not great. So, I think he'll be fine. I think that it might take a month, but I think he'll be the lead guy there in that offense.
All right. Mike Clay, friend of the podcast. Do you, man? You're doing great things at ESPN, and we'll try to get you on during the regular season. It's always a pleasure. At Mike Clay NFL on Twitter. Go on there, troll him. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
All right. Thanks a lot, fellas.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for coming on, Mike, our first repeat guest.
Mike Clay, the man, the myth, the legend. Kyle, we're going to do some bold predictions tonight. Initially, we had the NFC South on cue, but it's a fantasy goodness coming out of that division. What are you thinking? Let's bounce around at a couple positions who we like in terms of bold predictions. Bob, where are you at with some of these quarterbacks? And we know it's a deep field, which is why I think I'm hesitant on Patrick Mahomes, and we can talk about him every week. But it really is deep. And you talk about Eli Mannings and Tannehill and Andy Dalton. Where are you, Bob Harris, with quarterbacks in terms of a bold prediction?
Apparently, according to ADP, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be one of the biggest, most monumental busts in recent fantasy memory. Look, ADP's high on Garoppolo. I get it, and I would be the first to admit when he came in for the 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks, it took me about one play to say, look, this guy can play quarterback, which was not something I had said about the previous quarterbacks on the field for San Francisco up to that point. So I get it, and I like the production and everything. I just wonder if we're going to see the guy. I just wonder. I think we're drafting him maybe at his ceiling, right? And that always makes me a little nervous about guys. So maybe people are overdrafting him. And I think Blake Bortles will once again. Here's the boldest prediction: Blake Bortles will, for the fourth straight year, be a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Which isn't that bold of a prediction because he's done it the last three.
Let me ask you, how does the surrounding cast for Jimmy Garoppolo affect that? Because he's got Marquise Goodwin, who's a phenomenal field stretcher, but not a true number one receiver. Pierre Garçon turned 32 today, apparently. Didn't know that. 32 coming off, I believe, was a neck injury. And then beyond that, first-year receiver in Dante Pettis. Do you see that factoring in the questionable talent at best around him, factoring into him not being as successful as some might expect?
I like some of these guys, and I like, especially at the price. Garçon grows increasingly appealing as the news that Marquise Goodwin is a thing continues to drive his price up, and Garçon's down. He was on pace for a 1,000-yard season last year when he got hurt. He seems like a reliable guy. Some of this is about balance when you're creating your roster. Within your, you want a balanced roster between positions, but even within positions. And so, if you've gone upside guys or riskier plays early or guys that you think are more spike players and you want maybe a steady Eddie at the right price, maybe a guy like Garçon is good and he's going to work in Garoppolo's favor to a degree. I just don't know if it's the kind of high-end production when you see some of the guys going after Garoppolo that have lengthy and proven track records, the Phillip Rivers of the world. Come to mind. Garoppolo's going ahead of Matthew Stafford. He's going ahead of Ben Roethlisberger. He's going ahead of Phillip Rivers. He's going ahead of Andrew Luck. He's going ahead of Jared Goff. He's going ahead of Patrick Mahomes. That's shocking. I don't know what Justin thinks about that. He's going ahead of, and they're all going ahead of Matt Ryan. So
yeah,
look, I just think this is the thing that worries me. So I'm not down on Garoppolo. He looks like the real deal, but there are other guys who look equally, if not more real, who I can get many, many rounds later, and that's what I like to do.
My friend Jacob Rickroad from RotoViz tweeted out Marquise Goodwin is he's special, clear rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo. Concussions, a lot of concussions. Pierre Garçon is coming off the neck. He had a lot of success with Kyle Shanahan in Washington. I'm on team George Kittle. Give me some George Kittle, but I'm with Bob as far as Jimmy Garoppolo. And my bold prediction, Kyle, I think Marcus Mariota is going to be a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. New offense, very optimistic. A lot of weapons surrounding Marcus Mariota, and it's going to be nice to see him unleashed. I think we hope that his right ankle is 100% because his legs are a differentiator. We like running quarterbacks in fantasy land. So I think Marcus Mariota is going to be a top 12 quarterback in fantasy land. And they have a sound running game with Deion Lewis and Derrick Henry. So give me some Marcus Mariota as a top 12 fantasy quarterback 2018.
A little optimism of the unknown there. I like that. You know, I mean, look, we know what Marcus Mariota, what we expect to be, and sometimes as the fantasy community, we're a year ahead on guys, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we're always trying to find that next big thing, and maybe that's part of what happened with Mariota, although a large part of it was Terry Robisky and Mike Mularkey, and we're hoping that some Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay over the last few years have rubbed off on Matt LaFleur, and I'm sure the Titans are hoping the same as well. And I want to see a little bit of it before I buy into it completely. So I don't have a lot of shares of Mariota to this point, but if I see signs that this offense is ready to take a step forward, then I'll be more eager to pay the price for him. It's not an exorbitant price, so it's not like it's undoable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with sometimes we're a year ahead. Last year, I thought it was the year of Zach Zenner, but obviously it's coming this year. And that brings us to our running back hot takes. Bob, what is your running back bold prediction?
Number one, I'll go with Jordan Howard is going to be a lot better than everyone. I'll go ahead and say he'll have a top 10 season this year. And I get, you know, this just in. He doesn't catch the football well. And this is no mistake, but I just think when we look at him, a guy that, you know, was, I think, arguably better than people realized last year. The dropped passes that would have easily been touchdowns aside. Mm-hmm. Don't ignore those. No, look, mm-hmm. We're hoping this offense, another offense that's going to take a step forward with Matt Nagy. We go from a Paleozoic offense to a modern offense. That's what we like to do, right? We saw it with the Rams. So we're hoping that it takes a step forward. I don't care how much of a step forward it takes. Just because of what everyone's expectation is, it's already more threatening than the offense John Fox and Dal Logan throughout there last year. And that being the case, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there was a lot of men in the box last year with Jordan Howard's running back. That's going to change a little bit this year. I think they'll still use him as a primary back. A lot of intrigue with Tariq Cohen and how much they'll use him. I think they'll find creative ways to use him. But Matt Nagy has basically said, look, this is our feature back. I think he's going to produce as such this very season.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, he's a volume back, stayed healthy primarily. A lot of Tariq Cohen love. I know Emery Hunt said that Tariq Cohen, he said he could withstand volume. So I think Tariq Cohen's a good guy to have around, permitting Jordan Howard would get injured. I think Tariq Cohen's role could potentially increase. So Cohen's a good guy to have because he's going to catch 50 to 60 passes. But Howard is a volume back, almost a glorified Lamar Miller. He's 23 years old. I think it's going to be a better Bears offense than we're accustomed to seeing. And I'm with you. Jordan Howard is not getting the love that he deserves. And top 10 is brazen. But if he plays 16 games, he's going to get the football around 300 times. He's had 12 100-yard games in the last 2 seasons and only coughed it up twice. We like that. And I still think he's going to catch 25, 30 balls. So he's not Alfred Morris.
On accident.
On accident, right. So he's not Alfred Morris absent in the passing game. So he's going to have a few catches. But I'm with you there, Bob. Absolutely.
And could I just, I want to be really bold and go way out on a limb here because I think that was not far enough on a limb. Christian McCaffrey's not going to get those 400 touches. That's my bold prediction.
I would agree there too. But I mean, why do they pick up C.J. Anderson? I think C.J. Anderson's going to get 200 touches as well. Christian McCaffrey did not get a lot of work inside the red zone last year. And like you say, Bob, often, I mean, they have one of the best goal line threats in the game in Cam Newton. So C.J. Anderson, Cam Newton.
I'm going back to the mathematics of this again. It's if Ron Rivera wants him to increase to 200 carries, which seems reasonable. And thinks he's going to get 400 touches, that's 200 catches if my abacus is correct. And Marvin Harrison thinks that's going to be really hard.
Not going to happen, certainly for Christian McCaffrey. I think that in terms of bold predictions for myself, there's a reason why I'm drafting wide receivers early and often and I try to get 3 to 4 wide receiver ones right out of the gate. So I'm seeing a lot of players like Lamar Miller and Duke Johnson, a little more crowded of a backfield. But I'm going to go ahead and say if Jay Ajayi plays 16 games, I think we could see shades of what he did 2016 in Miami. 250 carries, 1,100 yards. and 7 or 8 touchdowns. So give me some Jay Ajayi, predicated on the cost, but I think, despite seemingly ageless Darren Sproles being healthy, and Corey Clement, Mike Clay mentioned, is a back, a similar mold to Jay Ajayi. You think he's a perfect handcuff? Give me some Jay Ajayi. You think he's a top 15 running back in 2018 fantasy land. And he's coming at a hell of a discount, particularly for zero RB enthusiasts, which is certainly what I am.
All right, I think that could bring us to wide receivers. Bob, scorch my eyebrows off with a wide receiver take.
Oh, something that's going to be totally shocking and off the wall. Let's go with Alshon Jeffery will be top 15. Is that shocking enough? No, I don't know. That might not be shocking enough. Alshon Jeffery will be top 15. I'll go with that.
Wow. No concern. I was cracking the numbers with Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffery, and they were very similar last year. And you're getting Nelson Aguilar at a discount. So I agree. I think you're getting Jeffery at a bit of a discount too. I mean, based on what my expectations are. Look, the first year there, he played all last season hurt. Let's remember that. Mm-hmm. He hurt the shoulder in training camp, became a trusted target for Carson Wentz, and just a trusted target in general, regardless of quarterback. He comes in, I'm assuming he's going to be healthy week 1. Look, you're drafting him at a bit of, I think you're getting a discount here. We're certainly not drafting him at a ceiling. But I think people are definitely overlooking him. Nelson Aguilar, just talking to the people who cover the team closely on a daily basis, they're not sure Nelson Aguilar can duplicate last year. So I know, it could have been a little fluky. I kind of like him. I kind of like his price, right? I kind of like him based on his price. But I think Jeffrey, for me, is a guy I'm drafting a lot because I think people are overlooking his scoring ability. Mm-hmm. I think what you're banking on is the Chicago Bears version of Alshon Jeffery that we got glimpses of, the 6'3".
Got to stay healthy.
The health has been a big thing for Alshon Jeffery, but he wasn't that long ago that he was right in that wide receiver 1 talk when he was with the Chicago Bears. So he's
right. He had the 81. It was the 89 catch season, and followed. He had 89 and then I gotta look, 85, 89, then 85, 1,400 yards, 1,100 yards. The 10 TDs that he had that season. Look, I think he can be that guy, and I think he's not being drafted as such. And if you think Carson Wentz is going to be everything that he was last year and more, and apparently based on his ADP, everyone thinks that's the case, he's going to have some guys come through beyond Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz, and one of them is going to be Alshon Jeffery.
Yeah, Alshon Jeffery, MFL 10 ADP looks right around 22 or 23. You said top 15. That scorched the eyebrows. Justin, can you top that?
Well, I like to hammer wide receivers early, but there are quite a bit of wide receivers that I see that are going to are come at a good price, and they're probably going to outperform their ADP. And I tend to lean Jamison Crowder's way. I think Crowder's a guy that fits well with Alex Smith's capabilities down in Washington. You're getting Crowder, although his ADP has shot up a little bit. I think he's a 70 catch wide receiver. I also like Robbie Anderson. I think Robbie Anderson, 63 receptions, close to 1,000 yards last season. He can only get better. They love him. He's going to be on an offense that's going to be down quite a bit. So give me some Robbie Anderson, Crowder. I think they're both in that top 25 range. And a player like Marquise Goodwin, it kind of falls in that scope for me, where I'm not, that confident on any of these guys, but as heavy as I take wide receivers, I'm fine with them being my fives for certain, and I'm definitely the most keen on what 25-year-old Jamison Crowder can do in this point. Kind of plays it. He's a Sterling Shepard, he's a Randall Cobb, and I think Crowder, of those three that I just mentioned, I think Crowder is the highest ceiling. And there's a lot of cynics about Sterling Shepard. I think he came out of Oklahoma polished. I think where Odell Beckham's coming back. Shepard was hurt last year, missed 5 games, but he was on pace to perform really well. And it's going to be an interesting Giants offense with Saquon Barkley, and there's going to be some balance since the departure of Tiki Barber. And it's kind of like the Seattle Seahawks. We want to see the Giants have a good running game as fans. So give me some Jamison Crowder, top 25. I also like Robbie Anderson.
I feel like that was like I predicted a 7 spot increase over ADP. I feel like that's really lame. And like I prepared heavily for this show by doing a previous show. So let me just go back to my favorite guy, one of my most owned. I wanted Mulligan, but it's not really a Mulligan because I still do love Alshon Jeffery. But let me just say, I'm going to say Dante Moncrief has a career year in terms of touchdowns, which means at least 8? Yeah,
wow.
I say Dante Moncrief has a career year in terms of touchdowns scored.
Wow, and Kyle mentioned last week, we were talking about the AFC South last week, and it's kind of a crowded pass catching crowd, if you will, down in Jacksonville. So that is pretty bold.
It's kind of not, though. It's kind of like 3 guys, and maybe Chark if he comes on. Look, D.D. Westbrook is everybody's darling, except the Jaguars.
It could very much end up being Justin's favorite phrase, a sea of mediocrity, and at which point you don't have to be that good to excel over them.
No. Exactly.
It's depth, not top-end talent, and if Moncrief flashes, even doesn't have to do top-end talent, just some talent, he could beat out these other players.
He's been pretty, look, athletically, he's similar to Allen Robinson, right? Good size and speed, downfield threat. They've used that before. Marquise Lee, not necessarily that guy. Keelan Cole, not necessarily that guy. Maybe DJ Chark is. But they paid Dante Moncrief a 1-year guaranteed salary. They're paying him $9 million, to do something. And in camp, he's been targeted pretty heavily in terms of some big plays. So I feel like that scorches more eyebrows than Alshon Jeffery. I feel much better about myself now. Thank you.
They also paid Allen Hurns quite a bit of money, and he did squat after that 10 touchdown season.
We're scorching eyebrows here, Justin.
I know. Marquise Lee, to me, is Robert Woods. I think they're mirror images.
You're making my case. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they are. Just nothing too fancy, but a precise possession receiver. So I like Lee out of that whole crowd, but I get the allure in Dante Moncrief, and it'll be interesting to see because we had high hopes of what he was capable of doing in Indianapolis. Didn't work out, but geographical relocations are sometimes with the doctor order. I think we know the Jags' identity is going to be running the football, playing defense.
All right, Justin, give me your tight end scorcher.
I love Charles Clay. I love Charles Clay, and I love Austin Hooper. I think they're going to be both top 15 fantasy tight ends. Charles Clay, it's probably for obvious reasons. I mean, it's a terrible Buffalo Bills offense. I think Clay has shown us, particularly in DFS, which this show is going to be during the regular season, that he can have some of those, tight end 1 weeks. And it is a sea of mediocrity, so I'm the most comfortable Charles Clay. I think he sticks out in an offensive, and certainly an offensive below mediocrity, but he's one of those guys where I'll take a lot of Charles Clay because there's just not a lot of options there, and I think he's one of these hybrid tight ends. We saw what he did in Miami that can kind of roam around. He's not an enormous tight end by any stretch, but he can do different things, and I think Hooper's going to have an increased role in Atlanta too on a potent Atlanta Falcons offense. So those two there are 2 top 15 tight ends for me in fantasy land for certain.
Tyler Eifert will stay healthy and be one of 3 tight ends to score double-digit touchdowns.
A lot of Eifert hype from you. Is he going to stay healthy?
I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm injury agnostic. I don't care. He's healthy until he's not, and right now he is. And either way, when he's on the field, he catches a hell of a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, he
does. Only one other tight end has caught as many as him, or more than. It's him. Rudolph and Braid are the top 3 over the last couple of years, and Eifert's missed a hell of a lot of time. So that's my point. Yes, he's got to stay healthy, but if he does, he's a touchdown machine, and he's great value right now.
Heath Cummings just took DeAndre Hopkins 7 in a Football Guys draft. That's discouraging. AB went 6, and I'm at pick 9. I think you guys know what I'll probably do there. This is a good show, and I can't wait till next
I think
week.
You'll pick a tight end there.
Yeah, I'm going to take round 1 Gronk. I like round 3 Gronk, but not round 1 Gronk. Well, it's a DFS show. I look forward to talking to you guys during the regular season. Kyle, do we anticipate picking up the NFC South next week?
Yeah, we should be on what I think might be the most important division for fantasy. We've got so many good offenses, really not any atrocious offenses. We don't have any Cleveland Browns. We don't have any Jets. So push that to a show of its own because there will be a lot to break down next week. And I think that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you want to get your Diehards pod updates, you can follow Justin at Justin Lonero, Bob at Football Diehard, and myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for tuning in.